And it looks like we are live. Hello, everyone. We have
Everybody.
Mildo
Hello.
and Draco and Nimue and Vera Faith in the house. How are you guys doing? We're really happy to see you. By the way, you guys, I got a note from Sten. He was not able to attend. I guess that he had to go to bed for, like his Monday morning type thing.
Right,
So he
right.
wasn't able to hang out with us tonight. But he sends his best, and he'll probably catch the replay. Oh, I forgot to turn off my phone. Hang on a moment. Okay, he left a message. Okay, I'm telling him I'm live streaming right now.
Just let me know when we can, go on. So.
Okay. It's a client that, I mean, obviously didn't understand that I was going to be live streaming today.
Right.
So he thought call at 12. Instead, I told him, no, I'm going to be not available at 12. So, okay, Dave, let's go ahead and load up the document. Okay, can everybody see the document?
There's also the URL that I gave you in case they can't read it well or something.
That is correct, and they can read it in a different screen if they would like to switch over to that. That link is in the description of this video on YouTube. If you scroll down in the description, if you want to open up this document so that you have your whole screen and then you can just listen to us, that's completely fine. But most of our audience likes to have us featured in the video, so they'll allow us to read everything, and because it's more about the interaction with us, I believe, than otherwise they could just read it themselves without the video, right? And we're here to network and be there in an energetic container for our community, and discuss things. And so anyway, we're going to go ahead and get started. So this is the HackMD link that you see in your screen right now. And again, that link is below. If you want it in a PDF format, I think that Dave has that available. We can upload it to our Patreon if anybody wants it in a different format. So, Empty Worlds, the crisis of meaning in modern fantasy.
And you want me to start reading?
Yes.
Okay. I'll give a little setup first. What precipitated this writing is I saw a video just happened to pop up on my YouTube feed, and it was called "This is Why We Never Got Another Lord of the Rings," and the author of the video made a number of very good points, and I decided to take those points and put my own perception and spin on it, and in so doing, I wrote this article. So that's basically what the actual video link is at the very end of this document, in case anybody wants to see that. So that's what precipitated this writing. And
I also added that link in the video description too, Dave, just letting you know. I decided to include it in this video description as well, and I forgot to tell you. So, okay, we're gonna scroll down here.
Empty Worlds, the crisis of meaning in modern fantasy. Why modern fantasy leaves me cold. I've spent much time lately reflecting on why modern fantasy doesn't resonate with me. Whether browsing bookstores or scrolling through streaming platforms, so much of what gets labeled as fantasy feels hollow, mass-produced, or even parodic. Recently, I came across a video titled, "This is Why We Never Got Another Lord of the Rings," that articulated many of my frustrations in a way that I hadn't seen before. While this video covers a wide range of topics, one idea struck me most profoundly. Tolkien's work wasn't just different from modern fantasy, it didn't belong to the genre at all. What I realize is this: I'm not drawn to fantasy as a genre, I'm drawn to myths. Real myths feel complete, interconnected, and alive. Every piece belongs because it grew organically from the same source. And somehow Tolkien achieved this wholeness as a single author, crafting something that feels as timeless and inevitable as stories born from entire cultures over centuries. And then we go down.
Yeah, we might even like plug our see Tolkien as shamanism, see Tolkien in our in language.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
right.
we're gonna be like, once we do it, see Tolkien in channeling, because that totally meshes in with this statement. It totally does. Let's go ahead and keep going.
Okay. Tolkien wasn't writing "quote unquote" fantasy. Tolkien's work wasn't part of a genre when he created it. He wasn't trying to write fantasy in the sense we understand today. He was a philologist, a medievalist, and a war veteran who wove together languages, histories, and myths not to entertain, but to restore a sense of the sacred in storytelling. When I read The Lord of the Rings, or when I read The Lord of the Rings, I'm not reading genre fiction. I'm reading something mythic, timeless, and deeply resonant. As the video points out, Tolkien wasn't responsible for inventing modern fantasy. In fact, while the commercialization of fantasy was taking shape in America, Tolkien was living his quiet life in England, painting, raising his children, talking to trees, and writing stories that felt like they had emerged from the deep roots of the world. His work existed outside the machine, but Tolkien's popularity created a market, and markets inevitably attract people who see patterns to be endlessly replicated rather than mysteries to be honored. For Tolkien, language wasn't just a tool, it was a foundation upon which everything else rested. The names, places, and histories of Middle-earth aren't arbitrary. They're imbued with meaning, each element contributing to a living, breathing world.
Exactly.
And now I'm going to go in how the fantasy genre actually got started. The Del Rey machine, how fantasy became formulaic. One of the most eye-opening sections of the video discusses Lester Del Rey and his role in shaping modern fantasy. Del Rey didn't just publish fantasy, he turned it into a replicable formula. As the video describes, he built a machine, and once that machine was running, the soul of storytelling began to drain away. Authors stopped being myth makers and became copyists. The goal shifted from vision and truth to market share. In Del Rey's system, story elements became interchangeable parts, but true mythology resists such reductionism. In myth, nothing is arbitrary. Every detail is alive, connected, and essential to the whole. This is a gut feeling I get whenever I walk through the fantasy section of a bookstore. Most of these books aren't bad because they're poorly written. They're bad because they're empty. They operate within a rigid, artificial framework designed not around vision, but around commerce. The video captures this perfectly, describing how fantasy was reshaped to be safe, consumable, and iterative. Publications like Amazon's Rings of Power or The Wheel of Time embody this process. Shows engineered by committee, built to echo a mythic tone without any real mythic soul. And I go, formula kills meaning. The video begins with a stark warning. Formulas destroy everything. That line has stayed with me ever since. What Tolkien accomplished, the depth, the resonance, the sheer magic of his work, wasn't formulaic. It was the opposite. His stories grew out of memory, grief, beauty, and language. He wasn't trying to build a franchise, he was trying to tell the truth through story. When we reduce storytelling to a formula, we lose the ineffable quality that makes it meaningful. True myth-making requires vulnerability, imagination, and a willingness to embrace mystery. By contrast, formulaic storytelling prioritizes predictability and profit margins. That's why I don't believe Tolkien belongs to modern fantasy. His name may adorn the banner, but he didn't construct the tent. That was Lester Del Rey and others like him, who took a complex sacred act and boiled it down to its most bankable components. And I go, represents a broader cultural problem. A broader cultural problem. The trajectory of the fantasy genre reflects a larger cultural issue. It is symptomatic of how our capitalist industrialized society turns the dream rich into the dead boring. Art becomes product. Myth becomes merch. And we, the audience, are slowly targeted to forget the difference. Modern fantasy assembles components, a magic system here, a character archetype there, like building with blocks. But mythology works more like a tree. Every branch, every leaf grows from the same living center. Cut one part, and the whole organism responds. What the video made me realize is that my frustration with modern fantasy isn't just about books or TV shows. It's about the loss of the mythic as a living language. It's about how we've forgotten to dream stories that aren't merely content, but vessels of something deeper. And here's the conclusion. Why there won't be another Tolkien. There hasn't been another Tolkien because the system isn't designed to produce one. You don't get myth by following a checklist. You get it when someone sinks down into the root system of the world and comes back up with something numinous. That's what Tolkien did. Until our culture remembers the difference between art and product, until we rebuild the conditions where vision is valued over volume, we'll keep getting fantasy that looks like magic but feels like marketing. The video didn't just explain why we never got another Lord of the Rings. It explains why we probably won't, not until we stop mistaking the machine for the myth. And then the ending part is
okay, and then there's the
telling about
video link for anybody that wants it.
Right.
And again, that video is also in the description. No, this is one of the most brilliant, and it's a short article, but it's one of the most brilliant pieces that are here because, again, it really talks about why Tolkien can't just be replicated. And what it was is that he wasn't trying to write fantasy.
Exactly.
That wasn't what he was doing. And honestly, I am surprised that he even got published in his era, to be honest with you. Because even in his era, there were formulaic people trying to do formulaic things. And because Tolkien was outside of that box, they took a risk. Okay, they took a monetary risk that could have just went south, and none of us would have ever heard of Tolkien. And Tolkien would have still done his task of myth making, but none of us would know about it.
Exactly.
If I remember correctly, he actually was rejected like quite a few times by traditional publishers. Like it. Took,
that happens a lot.
It wasn't like someone was like read it and was like, oh yeah, on his first try and was like, oh, this is going to be amazing. No, I think he was like rejected like 9 times or something before.
Yeah, and actually that happened all the time for anybody that's a famous author. They almost always have you know, like, or I should say over like 10 letters of rejection for different reasons and different whatever. And it's because they are not artists. They are not creators. They are business people. They are the ones that are looking for the formula, looking for that dollar, looking for all of that. And they feel like and by the way, this happens in the music industry too, you know?
So yeah, I am. Oh yeah, no, you're absolutely correct.
You know,
I was going to touch
you have
on that.
unique music that nobody's ever heard of before, and they won't take a risk on it. Nowadays, you can go on YouTube and upload your stuff, but you know, you're also drowning in an ocean of lots of other people doing that, and most of them are trying to make the buck. So they're you know, it's an ocean still of like monotonous crazy shit, right? Like just
actually I just want to say his publishers Alan and Unwin, who published The Hobbit, kept trying to get him to they kept pestering him. We need a sequel to The Hobbit. We need a sequel to The Hobbit. And then when I found out when he said in the initial drafts for War of the Rings, and they found out it really wasn't a continuation of The Hobbit, they were greatly disappointed and kept saying, "Why don't you make a sequel to The Hobbit? Damn it!" You know?
Well, and he did tell them why, and I mean they don't understand the reason. But he says, "Hey, it just went into crap, you know, after Aragorn's son died, and just went into, you know, horrible things." And it's depressing. I don't want to write it. And they're like, well, just write it differently. You know, like they didn't understand, obviously, his process and what he was doing. What I will say, though, about Tolkien and why we haven't seen anybody like him and why we might not ever see anybody like him again. Okay, I'm gonna frame that in our lifetime. Okay, because I do believe that when myths are not being recognized anymore, there will be somebody born that will regenerate that material. Okay, so there are probably other Tolkien type people that do the job, but I will say this: no one will do the job like Tolkien did. I don't think because his essence, okay, was so unique, not just because of his abilities, you know, shamanically, but also his abilities linguistically. He literally, you know, created, you know, channeled, okay, the language and all the characters and how it worked, okay. And if he didn't have an understanding of language, he would have never been able to bring forth the material that he brought forth. Okay, so he needed that linguistic ability along with that shamanic talent of being able to go to fairy. So I do believe that other authors journey and go into other realms and, you know, bring back stories. But chances are they don't hang around long enough to learn their language, you know. And maybe it wasn't an interest of theirs, you know, like maybe just the story or the essence of it. And you can do that with telepathy and not necessarily language, right? So then you could just translate that into your own language, the ideas and the essence of it, and write it in your own language. But, you know, he went the extra step for sure.
It also depends upon the inherent skill of the receiver. Like, I don't think linguistically at all. I think visually internally. So I have Selby visions, but I can't tell their language because they don't have one. It's all visual imagery. So, you know,
right.
So you wouldn't get any language because there isn't any, you know.
Right. Nimue has a comment. She says, I too am drawn to myths and not fantasy. I've tried over and over to get into different fantasy stories and I couldn't stick with them. Tolkien's works read and feel rich like history. They are alive. Bingo.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the same,
exactly
same way I feel.
And if Tolkien were still alive today, those stories would still be evolving and growing and changing and morphing. And that's what mythology does. It doesn't just stay static like a formula, like next and cut, you know, that type of thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
Mildo says, just shared the article with some Tolkienist groups. I hope I could. And I think Dave would give permission to that, right? Dave, like Mildo can share the article.
It's publicly published. Yeah, you know.
Exactly. And you can share the video too if they want to watch it instead of, you know, reading it. I think people will never stop to need to be reminded what it says. It's just there are a few people with the energy to write it. Oh, okay, I see what you're saying. Meaning to say it and like just be a truth bomb and say Tolkien is not fantasy. Tolkien is mythology.
Yeah, and you know the whole thing that I wrote earlier there about following patterns, that's also a larger overcultural pattern in that, you know, they hear that Tolkien is the father of fantasy, so they repeat it. You know,
right.
monkey see, monkey say.
Marketing. That was a great way to market what they were doing, though. Think about it. Like somebody who was already successful, and they kind of maybe got inspired of the idea, but only the idea at the surface level, and then to make a formula out of it. You know, that was appealing to a market of people that would buy that formula over and over again.
Oh,
go ahead.
Okay. I was just going to say, I remember, and the video that I saw, the video at the bottom that I reference, talks about this too. I remember what what in the mid to late 70s when The Lord of the Rings was popular as a literary work, and they were trying to make movies out of it, but they only made a few animated ones.
Yeah.
There was a book that came out that was actually said by the publishers to be the next Lord of the Rings, and it was called The Sword of Shannara, and all it was basically a copy. Although the dude did set it in like the far distant future after a nuclear war 1,000 years later or something like that, but nevertheless it wasn't
Yeah,
So
I
that
mean, and
good.
by the way, as a story set, I mean, it's not like that it's a bad story, but it's not mythology. And
Right,
you really
right,
feel the mythology element in Tolkien, and nobody knows what it is. Nobody knows what to
right.
call it. How come this feels so real?
well, if I
Yeah,
yeah.
there's a reason for that. Yeah.
So something I wanted to touch on that goes in line with what Dave's been saying was and I was talking with Dave and Lisa kind of backstage. So in 1949, there is a gentleman named Joseph Campbell, and Joseph Campbell he wrote a book in 1949 which was called Hero with a Thousand Faces. It describes the hero's journey as a monomyth, basically a universal story pattern that's found across cultures. And he wrote this book, and what ended up happening was, unfortunately for him, it's really an unfortunate, is there was a gentleman named Christopher Vogler who was a Hollywood story consultant. Back, I'd have to look at when he was born, but either way, it was around the same time. And Christopher Vogler took Joseph Campbell's material and he condensed his model into 12 steps, making it more accessible for screenwriters. And so what he did was, there are multiple steps if you ever want to look at the hero's journey, but the 3 phases of the hero's journey that they use is phase 1 is what they call the departure. The hero is in the ordinary world, and something comes along, whether it's Marvel movies where they get bit by a spider or fall into something, hit with gamma radiation. Something triggers them to have to depart their normal world. You can even apply it to Star Wars. You can apply it to Harry Potter, where he's living his normal life and he gets a letter, and so the departure happens. Something drives them out of their normal world. Then they get an initiation where basically they are going through trials and enemies, undergoing transformation. They may even be reluctant to leave the original world, like you see in all of the shows where they're like, I can't do this. I'm just, that, and it's always, no, you've been chosen to, be this. And so then the third phase, and like I said, there's steps within each phase, but the final phase is always the hero returns home, changed and bringing back a benefit for their community. What happened, unfortunately, and Joseph Campbell never would have intended this to happen, Christopher Vogels took his material, Vogler, and said, hey, this is a wonderful model. And they started in colleges and writing schools. They started training screenwriters on this step as a marketable formula. What unfortunately was sacrificed was originality. It's rare now that a movie or a show comes along that is truly original, because it even influenced into the book world. So as Dave mentioned, the Shannara Chronicles, which I, have read when I was younger growing up, spoiler alert, they're set in a post-apocalyptic future 1,000 years in 1,000 years from modern Earth. Well, then you look at, it's an equally good series, but you look at Margaret Weiss and Tracy Hickman's The Death Gate Cycle. 7 books. You read the thing, it starts off as this amazing fantasy, you get going. Spoiler for anyone who hasn't read it. Lo and behold, it's a post-apocalyptic world. Everything centers around a series of events that happened millennia ago on Earth. And so what unfortunately has happened in especially music or not music, it has there too, but in books, literary and visual filming, everybody uses the same platform, the same hero's journey, the same thing, and they've done it to where that has become marketable, even to the point where the not authors, but the publishers, the talent scouts, they are literally taught to follow the formula, read a book and examine, does it follow a marketable formula? So what's happened is, as a result of that formula happening, the hero's journey, we're no longer interested in unique storytelling. We're interested in, does this track to what we know produces cash? If it doesn't, it's why you get a Netflix TV series that the fans all freaking love, but it only gets one season because they're like, well, it's not tracking in what is marketable. It happened, well, besides it being complete garbage, it happened with with Rings of Power. When that show first came out, it had something like 2.5 million people watching the first season. Well, when they realized it was garbage, then by the time the second season came out, they were down to like 1 million viewers. Now, anyone who's producing content, if you suddenly lost, 1.2 million viewers, you'd be like, oh no, this is terrible. I lost viewers. There's actually articles where the writers and the executives for Amazon were thrilled to lose 1.2 million viewers, because what it meant was they got rid of the traditionalists and the people who actually watch it and read it for the story, and they got their market to where they could churn out tons of seasons that is crap, but it is marketable crap. And so they were ecstatic to lose 1.2 million, and they even bragged about it. They were like, yeah, we don't care, because that 1.2 million is not our target audience. We want people that will ingest the crap, love it, spread it, and make it profitable.
Well,
So
I can tell. I just want to say. I can tell you how they can get a lot more viewers and still turn out crap. Make it pornographic. All right, now
they do.
Now
I mean, look, they do. If you turn around and look at like anything on HBO, HBO will not put hardly any series out that doesn't involve naked boobs being flashed somewhere in like it can be the most pointless reason. It's like I got caught in a rainstorm, had to duck into a cab. Perfect time for naked boobs. Like, you're just like they've formulated. I think if we put a boob every 15 minutes in the show, we'll get the basic emotions covered. Like,
it was a water, yo. It made my clothes slippery. The boob just popped out. I couldn't help it.
But no, again, formula has become everything, and it's even, while hero's journey isn't used in the music industry, there is formulas in the music industry where a lot of the writers don't write their own material, because the music industry is like, no, don't worry about writing. We got the guy who wrote for Metallica, and he wrote for Beyonce, and he wrote for Christina Aguilera and Taylor Swift. I think she still writes some of her own material, but the point is,
Right.
They get these people and they're like, no, this guy wrote all the songs for all the big celebrities. Well, he follows an exact formula. It's why when certain songs come on, you can't tell if you're about to listen to Beyonce, Christina Aguilera, or Taylor Swift. And when they first come on the scene, like I'm old enough to remember that when Taylor Swift came out on I don't remember what TV show it was, but she was discovered. Everybody was like, wow, she's so fresh, she's so new, she's so unique. And you could progressively watch as she performed in this, where she stopped wearing, you know, coveralls and t-shirts from Walmart, and she started wearing designer, and then she started wearing makeup, and the makeup became much more like the mainstream thing. And before long, it was really hard to tell her music from anyone else's, because they take what's new and then they stick it into the formula, and then after a while they're like, wow, why is this artist they used to be so fresh? Well, yeah, you turned it into a marketable formula. So it's this whole thing where we don't want talent, we don't want myths like us as readers do, but the marketing world, originality, myths, that's not profitable. I mean, in rare cases, you get things like, she talked about it, but the artist Pink, she has songs where she talks about, one of the lyrics in one of her early songs is that literally LA told her she would be a pop star. All she had to do was change everything she was. It's one of her lyrics, and she didn't do it. But she talks about how they were like, yeah, your music, it could be great, but you need to stop dyeing your hair. You need to start dressing this way. You need to start using auto-tune. You need to start. And she basically told them, she's prided herself on telling them, telling the story that she told them basically to take a hike off of, a very tall bridge. And she managed to be a success, but it took much longer for her to gain the following and for the Hollywood to eventually be like, oh crap, people actually like her.
Well, and they like her for meaning those fans that she has, they're not like flavor of the day fans. They are dedicated because they realize that she's a real person.
Well, and it's why you can hear her song and you're not like, wait a minute, is this Pink?
And that's rare in the pop world too. I mean, it's not rare in the rock world, but it's rare in the pop world to do that.
Yeah. And so unfortunately, like Dave's article mentions, everything's been condensed to a formula, and that's what sells, unfortunately.
Yeah, so I'm going to go back up here to Nimwe's comment that we didn't get to read aloud. It says, in bringing the languages to life, then the resonance, the frequency was born. Worlds were born from that. But he started with the frequency first, which is in part why his work feels different. I agree with that.
100%.
He was doing heavy duty spiritual journeying and in those worlds, and absolutely and so I was going to mention that, we do see all of the hero's journeys, quote, requirements, unquote, within the body of Tolkien, but that's not how Tolkien's process was. Like, he wasn't looking at this list and going, oh, I got to add all these things. It was a completely organic, delving in experience. And it just so happens that this list ends up checking all the boxes. But Tolkien is like gazillions of worlds, even more than that.
Well,
and
also
that's why they, so they could sell it because of the hero's journey thing or whatever, right? And so they didn't understand what his process was. They didn't get
also
it.
there's some variations from. I'm not a Joseph Campbell like devotee, so I only know the essence of his works.
Okay,
but,
I got Christopher Vogler's IMDb, and he was born in 1949, so the same year that work was published, and he's still alive.
Interesting.
Okay.
Anyway, what I was going to say is some of the elements, like, well, for example, Frodo comes back. I suppose you could call him a hero, but he's more like a wounded war veteran, you know.
But
And
that's what happens to us. We
yeah,
change when we're
so
not the same when we come back, but we have to reintegrate. And, you know, I do like in the story that he gets to go to Valinor because Arwen, you know, gives him the ticket to
right.
go to, you know, and that was very telling of the relationship with Arwen and Frodo. Like, it was, again, another layer. I mean, there is so many layers to Tolkien because he was describing such deep, you know, character, and then the relationship between each character, and, like, you know, all of the things. These were all, quote, unnecessary if he was just doing it for money in the formula, right?
Right.
But that's not what was happening. Okay. So Nimue also says, absolutely ingested and regurgitated soulless formula made for mass consumption, relying on dressing it up in new clothes. It makes it pretty, not meaningful. Yuck. Absolutely.
Exactly.
We totally agree. We totally agree. So, on the note of where we were talking about the song being formulaic, that is absolutely the case. And for an experiment, I typed this in. You can look up a band called Axis of Awesome, and they perform all these songs like within one song, and you can literally hear it's the same song over and over again, just repackaged, redone, and they made fun of it. And I thought that was pretty damn cool.
I hadn't heard of that. That's interesting.
And like they're talking about, it's actually the regurgitation is what's happening now. If you look at, there's been a ton of YouTube creators that made a ton of content mocking it, also on TikTok, where they will do this, where the younger generation will be like, oh my God, this song is awesome. And, you know, it'll show like, it'll be like the same beat and everything. And then it's like, actually, all they did was take words and some of the stuff from a 1970s classic rock song,
right,
or 1980s classic rock. And so, like, the content creators like, hey, Dad, your generation didn't have music like this, and it'll play the modern song, and the dad's like, got the boombox sitting on the counter, and he's like, watch this, and hits it, and
it's like, a way better version. Oh my God.
The kid's like, what the hell's this? And the dad's like, and they keep going back and forth.
This is like, organic. It's not done on little machines that, you know, replicate.
So the regurgitation is everywhere. They're just taking old stuff and like, oh,
it's hilarious. And now with AI, funny. just wait, because I've seen some people using AI to write music. It's a little spooky, to be honest with you.
It's kind of funny because I was on this Nirvana listening kick last week, and of all
the people to admit that he stole everything from the Beatles, and I'm talking about Kurt Cobain.
But look,
at least he was honest.
looking at the comments.
I love Nirvana.
Yeah, look at the comments. You know, these teens of 20-somethings like, yo, man, I didn't even know there was such a band. Man, I got to see them in concert and shit. Like, you know, not even knowing that, of course,
yeah, you should have been born before 1994 when he left the planet very suddenly. And there's still some conspiracy around that about how he left, whether it was drug overdose or murder.
It just cracked me up though with that. Yo, man, I got to see him in concert, man. When are they playing?
Yeah.
You know, like we said, that is a thing nowadays where especially the younger generation, like, I don't remember who it was, but they used like an AC/DC song. And it was like one of the rappers used some of AC/DC's music.
Yeah.
And like the comments in the section were like, man, I don't know who AC/DC is, but because, you know, Dr. Dre just mentioned them, they're going to blow up big now. And it's like,
oh, big, man.
It's like, he used their music. They've been around.
I was going to say they're ancient dinosaurs, you know, and by the way, they're all on tour right now, by the way. Seems like every band from the day is on tour right now. Like it's
So-
crazy.
But yeah,
It's
so no,
absolutely
that it
nuts.
just goes into the whole formula where Hollywood and the music, they will just regurgitate things,
Yeah.
and that's what sells,
Well, you
unfortunately.
guys, I was just at a concert. You guys know this, okay? I went down to LA Witch, this time in San Diego. I won tickets to the LA show, and I went to that when I was in San Diego. Now that I'm in LA, I had to go all the way down to San Diego to see the show that I actually bought the tickets for. And I decided that I wanted to go because my friend was going, and I didn't want it to be weird, like where I'm like, dude, I'm not going now, you know. So and I was supposed to be there because like many magical things happened that night, and it has a lot to do with my own personal healing, and it was witnessing that, and it had to do with like my car going crazy and needing a new alternator belt, but also like a whole bunch of energetic stuff happened like with my car, and it ended up spitting out the CD that's been trapped in my CD player since 2019. It was my ex-boyfriend's. Okay.
Oh, holy shit! Wow.
It was so nuts, but interesting. I went down to the concert, and then there was a band opening that I'm not familiar with, and I hadn't heard of them. But the same thing happened to them, like where they just were uploading material. Okay, they're playing their own instruments, right? Like they're actually trying to do like 90s kind of. It's kind of a blend of like shoegaze and indie chunky, like, you know, like pop, like just like punk rock almost. Like it's kind of a blend between that. It's very 90s, and it's very girl like Riot Girl band kind of stuff. You know what I mean? Like that kind of blend. And I thought it was pretty cool, and I liked the young girls that were doing it, but they were doing all of these songs, and they just kind of were trying it out just to see what was happening. And they like met on a dating site of all things. Okay. and they just said, yeah, we'll throw up some music. And some famous DJ guy on TikTok picked up one of their songs and it like put a short segment of it in their thing. And then the next thing that happens is Spotify tells them that they got 60,000 hits on a song. Like, and this was like last year. And they were like at zero, like nothing was happening. And then just boom, exploded. Now they're on like national tour. They're going, you know, like they were touring with LA Witch. Now they're on tour with other. So like, even the way that new bands like are doing stuff, and by the way, they're not wealthy or like famous by any means, but like, you don't know what's going to happen. Like if somebody picks up your thing and then puts it out to their audience, and then like all of a sudden you get a lot of interest. You just don't know how these things are going to happen nowadays. But I listened to some of their other songs because I went to go see the headlining band, right? And I didn't really know about them, so I had to go check out their stuff. And wow, like they have really well produced videos, and their the lyrics are good, and like their regular music is pretty, like, I mean, you can tell it's really heavily produced because of the sound layering and some of the effects. But when they were in concert, though, like that's how you can tell like what's really going on. Okay. And they were rocking it hard. Okay. Like they totally were like a rock band. They were not, this fluffy, like whatever, is happening, but they did have like elements of that, but they mixed it in, and they have a really good mix of that. So, you know what? Are they formulaic? Are they doing a 90s thing? You know what? I'm okay with if you're inspired by a certain thing, and especially at their age, like when everything is like manufactured and just out of a box. And I got to give it to some people that like actually want to play instruments and do it the old way. I actually have some respect for that. That's pretty cool. So yeah, not everybody sucks. Okay. There are some people in the world that still like art. Okay. And even if it's inspired by artists that came before, like, I don't think that there's a problem with that. I think the problem is when like what you said, it's the intention. Like if you're like, ooh, I want to make a lot of money, so I'm going to copy this formula and then regurgitate it like it's mine. That's called plagiarism, or, you know, there's other words for that too, right? And I just think that, you know what? It's kind of like this. It's kind of like spirit makes sure that you can't really do that and get away with it for very much. Like, maybe you'll make a few bucks on the story, but it will not last. It will not go through the test of time. It will not, you know, be like, you know, whatever you know, like whatever it's supposed to be, like, you know, oh yes, I'll get as famous as Tolkien or whatever it is, right? It's not going to happen, because the process of the energy that happened was meant to be like utterly temporary, if nothing more than that. Like it was like literally for a fast buck and next, right? So, you know, if we're into crafting legacy for a lifetime, it has to be your own creation. It can't be like somebody's, you know, thing. And it doesn't mean you can't get inspiration, but it still has to be your creation. Okay. And whatever your process is. And so with the process that Tolkien had, it was utterly unique for probably all time. I can't think of anybody else that did the thing that he did. Okay. And when another myth maker becomes available to us and somehow gets noticed in the world, because we need that again, it'll happen again, but it probably won't be the way Tolkien did it. It probably won't be. We have Nimue saying, I'm hopeful that we'll see a rebellion from the youths against generated music and media overall into creating more art with soul again. Guess what, Nimue? I found out in the craft community, because I'm a crocheter, I found out that there are like get this, Gen Z, okay, instead of going drinking at the bars and all kinds of stuff, like there are girls that are like getting together and they're doing like crochet circles and quilting circles and stuff like that. Like it's a total backlash against this whole machine culture and going, you know what, if I can't date because everybody's a scumbag, okay, on Tinder or whatever, like I'll just go hang out with my girlfriends and we'll make cool stuff and we'll just go get yarn and we'll go get material and we're going to make things. They don't want like Shein, you know, factory clothing. They know all of this stuff is like polluting the world. And so I think that it's really cool that they're going back to it. And what I also like about some of those creators is they're going to thrift stores in order to get their supplies so that they're not even impacting that. So it's really a cool trend. Yeah, right. Yes. And so maybe we can do that with music and other kinds of like art and craft too. I know that there's a whole generation that's fascinated like with you know, CDs and like how to, like what kind of equipment nowadays to play CDs on so that it sounds really good. And you know, there's a lot of interest in that. And all you have to do is look at YouTube and just go to like vintage sound or, you know, whatever. And you can find a bunch of channels that are guys that specialize in this. Like, it's so crazy. It's like there's a whole like underground movement of like reclaiming the best elements of the past. Nimue says, oh, let me highlight your other comment first. That's awesome. I love that. Yes, fight the system with good old arts and crafts, right? Whoever thought a crochet hook would be like, you know, a weapon of mass destruction, right? By the way, that actually did happen. I remember back in the day, they would not let me bring crochet hooks on the airplane. So there's something to that. Our creativity reconnects us to our humanity. Exactly. It reconnects us to our humanity, and it interconnects us with other humans too. It's amazing. And that's what we're doing right here, even with YouTube and all this weird technology. But we are not AI. We are real people We read real mythology. We have real spiritual paths, and yeah, we're just real. So we're keeping it real, even if we only have, you know, less than 400 subscribers. Okay, like we don't care. That we're not here to like get the subscribers, or and we don't care if we get more. In fact, we'd like it, you know, to go to 5,000 or whatever, you know, one of these days. But we're not going to sell out to do it. That's not going to happen. We're not, Dave and yeah, I know DeKindre is not a sellout either, but Dave and I have actually had this conversation.
I wouldn't know how to write
We're
for the.
born in the mid 60s where we're like, screw you, sellout, you know, like type of things. Like we had the full on punk rock experience when we were teenagers and rebelling against the formulaic, you know.
I mean, you know, okay, my primary interest is Tolkien, but I wouldn't know how to write to the people who actually like Rings of Power, because to me they're fucking idiots. You know, I mean,
and you don't want to.
Yeah, so you know.
Yeah, you know what? We don't want to. Like anybody that stayed with Rings of Power, I will guarantee that they did not read Tolkien. Guarantee it.
Yeah, most of them did not.
They did not. There is no way. The 2 million people, or how many ever, that like stopped watching it, they read Tolkien.
Yeah, and that happens a lot in stuff, and it actually, with the whole marketing formula, it actually drives the like producers and people nuts in Hollywood, because they get really irritated, because the whole problem is they're not trying to market something that has content. They're trying to market something that has that can be monetized. And so when they actually deal with the people that have read the books or are familiar with the material, then they actually get really annoyed, because they're like, look, go away. I don't like you, which is why
they want the easy money from other people who are vulnerable and apparently have no taste.
Right.
It does make one wonder, though, why don't then if that's what they want to do, okay, that's fine. They make their own story. Don't have anything to do with Tolkien. Make their own.
You would think, right?
Well,
okay, and we've already talked about that. We actually do feel that there was an undermining effort in the, you know, upper echelons to water down everything, and not just Tolkien, but everything that had meaning in like older societies.
What
that
they've also
like tapped into those really deep themes. They want to erase that. They don't want people connected to mythology.
Well, what they've also done,
they want you controllable to where they're the narrative and they're the one. You know what I'm saying? Like they want that. So they paid a lot of money to get the rights to that, and then screwed it up completely. I think they did it deliberately.
No, it's even worse than that.
Well, yeah, but can we talk about that? Really?
Yeah. Well, here's why. Here's why it's worse than that. So people are like, okay, well, there's already predetermined stories about, you know, Celebrimbor. There's already this lore, this and that. So what they've done, and it's not just in Rings of Power or Wheel of Time or any of them, what Hollywood has started doing is what they're doing now, and this might be confusing to some. So if I want, which this is what they don't want to do, but if I want to tell, George Lucas wrote 9 books for the original Star Wars. If I want the Star Wars material, I have to buy the rights to the 9 books. Well, then I can't deviate too far from those books, because I bought the rights to the books. And so additionally, I can only make 9 movies, because that's all the content that I bought rights to. I can't make anything else because I don't have the rights. So what Hollywood has started doing is they go, I can only make 9 books if I buy the rights to the material or to the books. So what I'm going to do instead is, and this is what they did with Rings of Power.
Yes.
They did not buy the rights to Silmarillion, so they are not constricted to only following what's in the
they bought
Silmarillion.
the characters and the world and the
They
set,
bought
right?
world access.
Yeah.
And so they can
names, all of those kinds of things.
right.
Yeah.
So they can take the story and go, Celebrimbor was respected and married to so and so in the Silmarillion, but because we didn't buy the Silmarillion, we bought the world. We can kill him off, or we can kill her off, and have this love triangle between these 3,
or
because
something. Yeah.
or whatever. Because
like elves have love triangles. Are you kidding me?
But they can do it because they're not constricted by what was written in the Silmarillion, because they didn't buy the rights to the Silmarillion. They bought the rights to the characters. And so they can make them do whatever they want, even if Tolkien never would have written it. But they've done that. Yeah.
I believe I shall make him bisexual with a side interest in bestiality. Yeah.
So but that is where they're going, because they figured out that if they buy the 9 books, they may only have 3 seasons worth of material.
Right.
If they buy the world rights, they could get 15 seasons.
They could do whatever they want. Yeah.
So again, unfortunately, it's profitability. And so when the people who read the books go, yo, this didn't happen in the books, their attitude is, that's fantastic. We don't care about the books. We care about the world. So either enjoy our story or piss off.
Right. And here's Nimue saying exactly, the lost, malnourished on watered down myth are easier to mislead and control. And I agree with that.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Mythology gives you a lot of spiritual understanding and gives you a lot of sovereignty in yourself. And you can, because you're grounded in a sense, like in who you are and who, like mythology gives us those tools a lot. And if you're not grounded in something, it's way easier to get misled. You're right. And therefore controlled. And what are the corporations and their bosses and their bosses and their bosses that we don't even see? What are they after? What are they after? Control of your energy. And they want you to give it up. And if they knew that you had a way to access your own energy through understanding mythology, and each of us have our own mythology. And I believe that when I say, that each of us finds a lot of our own, like our own resonance within Tolkien's brought forth mythology. We were talking about that, Dave, like where other mythologies can do that too. Like they can still bring us back to that center of who we are.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And mythology does that. And mere formulaic stories that kind of copy a hero's journey moment. And by the way, I think that is an excellent work. And I'm talking about Joseph Campbell. I think that it's really awesome that he did that and then figured out what all the world mythologies have in common.
Right.
But
he never intended it to be a market.
He never intended it to be like where somebody would go, oh, cool, we can just make story after story after story and just use this formula and just sterilize it like that. I don't think that was what...
That was not his intention.
That was not the idea.
That was not his intention.
No.
But that's what, like we said, that's what Christopher Vogel did with it, was he took it down, condensed it to its basic, most marketable parts, and then trained entire generations of writers to write what's profitable.
And by the way, I think that if you organically write a story and then you want to check to make sure that all of the elements are integrated in order to keep, like audiences interested and stuff, I think that that's a different idea. But like to say, oh, you have to like do it this way, like, who's the characters? And then you write down the characters. What's the name of the world? Here's the name of the world. Like, it's such a creepy process to think about, to do that in reverse.
And
I don't even want to think about it. It's just so gross.
And the problem that exists to some extent is, as Dave's article touched on, it's really hard to find authentic processes, because everybody, whether they know it or not, they start, oh, you know, I really loved this book series when I was a kid. I'm going to write something kind of like that, or that's my inspiration. Well, the problem that we have is when everything around us is, I'll use the term marinated in that formula process.
Yeah.
It's saturated in it. Our problem is
drowning.
That it becomes a self-replicating machine. Like Dave said, the machine, once it was turned on and once it was the people are conditioned, you no longer need to try to contain them in that machine. The entire society follows that machine. And so breaking free from that becomes really hard, because the society itself starts to try to knock people back into the machine boxes without even realizing it, because they've been conditioned to accept this as authentic or this as natural, and anything deviating from the product of the typical machine becomes seen as an anomaly, and it's almost weird or a divergent. It almost has to be eradicated, because the machine wants this pre-programmed thinking and acceptance. And with
what is its actual food for that machine? It's money, and so it's always hungry. And so the creators of the machine, they made it to be a money machine, right?
So originality becomes a dysfunction in the machine. And so but because they've trained society from the time they're kids on this story formula without even consciously being aware of it, it gets into little things like, people don't realize that it's not, like we said, it's not just Hollywood, it's not just the music industry. When you there is literally $1 billion industry that spends millions of dollars on marketing. What color a package is, where it's placed, when you go into, for example,
you're right,
McDonald's, there is a reason that they use the coloring that they use.
Like everything is a formula.
Certain colors make you hungry. Other colors make you like they make you want to eat more, or they'll make you like there's whole reasons to the industry. And so when somewhere like, for example, Taco Bell, when they they're like, we're going to rebrand ourselves and remarket, and we're going to change the color layouts of our restaurants. It's not arbitrary. No, they didn't just decide, hey, we think these colors will go great on the wall, and we picked them when we were standing in Home Depot looking at color swatches. No, before they ever release their new color schemes, there is millions of dollars in research in how this is subconsciously going to affect their customers. And it's always done because it will be profitable. Like colors like red and yellow and certain bright colors, one, they trigger your hunger. You want to eat more when you're around them. They also trigger your agitation. So you go into a restaurant and you're hungry, you want to eat more, but you also want to get out of there. Well, and you want to get out of there. It's designed because they don't want customers to sit for long periods of time and feel comfortable and relaxed. They want you to come in, spend as much money, and leave. So there is
Yeah.
millions of dollars spent on how colors subconsciously affect people. Like if you want someone to be relaxed, like a therapy office, you use blues, certain colors of blues, not bright blues, but you use subdued blues against like light greens or, whatever.
Yeah.
That whole color scheme is designed to make you comfortable, make you feel safe, make you feel trusted, and make you talk. So there is whole, like I said, it's insane how much is put into that. And we don't ever realize that it's part of like the conditioning of the machine on every function of our life. The clothes
Yeah.
we wear, the styles we do, everything is marketed to
Yeah.
make
And
money.
well, on that note, like, does Red do that because they marketed it to us that way, or was it
No,
because it was a
it's
discovery? You see what I'm
it's
saying? Like,
well,
what
no,
was first?
the
You know what I
color
mean?
was first.
Yeah.
What they
Well,
did,
meaning the color effect on us
the
was
color
first,
effect on us was
and
first,
they're exploiting it.
and they
Yes.
are exploiting it.
Yeah,
It's a
I would say that that's
subconscious.
correct. But
It's
they could also program you to like a color too for different reasons as well.
Well,
Like, so,
exactly. There's
yeah.
whole shows on that where,
Hmm.
in fact, they actually go into it for anyone who's watched the TV show, White Collar, which is an older show. It was really good, but the main character in that show, played by Matt Bomer, is this art thief and forger named Neil Caffrey, and he's training his FBI guy, handler, at one point, and they had like 3 diamonds that were real and a handful of them that were fake. They were trying to set up a sting, and he literally went into the science in the show of, if I want you to look at the blue diamond, it's not something, it's existed well before this. It's before you ever saw the diamond. But if I want you to focus on the blue diamond first, then you can use words while talking in a normal conversation, and you can be like, oh, don't you find that these things ring true? And you use words, you use different types of things, movements, and all of this. It's a whole science to where you will pick up, out of all of the diamonds, you'll pick up the blue one first, all because you've been trained to, and it can be done even in a few minutes, to where just a few minute conversation, the science can train you to where when you go to look at those diamonds, you're going to pick up the blue one first, and then I can condition it so that you pick up the yellow next and the pink last, and by then the sting's already been set and you never even get to see the fake diamonds. But it's all a
Wow.
science. So this is they discovered
Wow.
long ago how the colors, how words, how things affect us. And then they have built a $1 billion industry around marketing things to us, where they place a product in a store, where they place a product in a store has an entire industry. Like, for example, candy packages are bright, vibrant, and often put within the 1 to 3 foot range of a shelf space. Why? Because they know that the parent isn't going to want to buy candy. However, if they put it in the 1 to 3 foot range where the kids are, the kids are going to see the candy, and the kids are going to be like, mom, buy me candy. Can I have a Twix? Can I have this? So the candy packages aren't designed to grab an adult's attention. They're designed to grab a kid's, because this is really warped. But as a store manager, out here, we have a chain of stores that I was a store manager for, and it was called Fun Factory. And basically, it's like a Dave and Buster's without food, or a Chuck E. Cheese without food. It was started local to the Hawaiian Islands, and it's an indoor kind of like arcade thing. It's designed to rip off your money. Like by the time you get anything, you've paid way more than the item was ever worth.
Right. Because it's about the game. Yeah.
But, well, actually, it's worse than that. And I know when I say that the marketing techniques, I know because I participated in this type of thing. Convincing it's designed for kids to have your birthday party and this and that. Routinely. And the parents knew, in a sense, what we were doing, but they couldn't necessarily deter it.
They didn't know how to say no to their kids.
Well, they didn't want to say no to their kid.
Right.
So we had a whole thing where in training, when I trained my store associates, it is messed up logic. But I started my training for new employees with, okay, guys, here's what's going to happen. Parents are going to hate our business. They will tell you they hate the business. We know the business. So when parents come in, do not focus on the parents to try to get them to come back. Yes, getting to know the parent's name is nice. Getting to know what they do is nice. But I'm like, the motto of our company was get the kid, you get the parent. So when the kid comes in, give them a $25 or a $2 coloring book for free. Toss them something extra, because yes, it's a $2 item or a $5 item.
Yeah, and learn the kids' names and everything. Yeah,
learn the kids' names, learn what they're doing, learn what interests them. And when you see them in the community, yes, talk to the parent, but learn the kid and be like, Mark, so good to see you. We used to wear our shirts, our uniform shirts, when running errands on our days off, because then Mark would see us. Mom, it's Dak from Fun Factory.
Oh, wow.
Mark, how you doing? Haven't seen you for a while. When you coming in again? Oh, I don't know. We've been busy. Oh, hey, maybe you should tell Mom you really want to come see everyone. We would do this, and I would train my employees, because that is the marketing that gets the money. The parents hate us. Yo. The parents hate us, but their kids love us. And so they get sick of, Mom, when are we going to Fun Factory? Mom, when are we going to Fun Factory? And so they're like, if it'll shut you up, I'll take you to Fun Factory. We also used to do things during we had a business next to us that looked like it was separate from us, that was food, that wasn't. And so you could take 10 or 12 kids. It was one of the food branches. But what we used to do, what we trained the food people in that side to do, the managers would do, was during a birthday party, give a kid a $5 banana split, or give the birthday kid a $5 milkshake. And at first, corporate was like, this is insane. You just gave away $5. Yeah. And by the end of the party, we've made $180.
Exactly.
Because no parent is going to sit there and make their kid watch some other kid get a banana split. So we gave away a $5 banana split, and we made, so
that everybody else, by peer pressure,
would buy more banana splits. It's insane. But there was a whole training.
Wow.
One of the store managers at another store noted, and it got replicated in all the stores. One of the stores on Maui, the island next to us, just this goes into marketing. He noticed that grandmas were bringing their grandkids in. Well, they would spend $20 or $40 and then leave. And he noticed that it was because, hey, wait a minute, grandma is not wanting to stand for very long. So he went to Home Depot and he bought like 4 or 6 benches for his store. And he put them around in strategic sections of his arcade store. And what he discovered was that if grandma has a place to sit and work on her knitting, or she has a place to sit and read her book. He went from that transaction only getting $40 to maybe grandmother would spend $100 because she
Right.
has the disposable income. And if she can sit, then
Right.
she's
And make
much
her
more comfortable.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
again, it's meant to describe what I was sharing was everything is down to marketing. And for those of us like myself who have done corporate management, our entire interaction with the general public is a strategized formula on what makes you feel valued and thus what makes you spend more money. None of the
Wow.
connections are typically genuine. It's all generic. Same when you call T-Mobile, Xbox tech support. We're literally trained to lie to build a connection, an artificial connection with you that gets more money. If we hear a dog barking in the background and you're like, oh, sorry, that's my border collie. Oh my God, I love border collies, you know.
Mhm.
How old is she? Oh, she's 3 years old, you know, this and that. Oh, I
Wow.
don't have a border collie now. I have a Labrador though. She's 5. And, you know, wonderful thing.
Just
I don't
yeah,
have
the
dogs.
connection though is dogs
I
or
don't, yeah,
pets. Yeah.
pets. But it gets you talking, it gets you comfortable, it gets you spending money. The reality, I live in an apartment complex at the time, and we have a no pet policy.
Yeah, right.
But the number of times that I've had dogs or cats or birds or anything to build a
Yeah.
connection, or you love
Right. Yeah, you can
classic
just draw
cars,
from that experience.
draw from
Yeah.
it. There's a whole
Mhm.
marketing industry on, and
Yeah.
it's why everything is artificial. And like Dave's article said, is because everything is designed to be fake. Every
Yeah.
interaction with
Well, and I
every
think
store
that this
employee.
is actually the corporatism part of this lecture, like where I put corporatism as like
Right.
part of the like
Because I,
it's a
well, like,
hashtag for this video.
right.
I think we discussed that aspect quite a bit, like with you know, the like manipulating psychology
Right.
of like really in a way it's not like astute people who have a really strong mind. You're after the ones that are like kind of middle of the road, you know, like, and they don't have a strong sense of center. Like you want to
Right.
sway them to you.
Right.
And that these are all tactics that work. And by the way, like that's where most of your money comes from, I guess. So, you know, why
Oh, yeah.
not? Right.
It's why the business, for example, does as a whole. There's 7 islands. There are roughly 2 stores on every island. Oahu has a few more, but there's a reason that the store or that the company, and there's a few branches of other things that were part of that company years ago when I worked for them. But there's a reason that their profits are 1.5 billion a year. It's marketed and it's trained on how to catch people.
Wow. Yeah, Nimue saying organizational psychology, understanding how to manipulate the mind to see what you want it to see. Yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly.
Definitely.
It is a entire strategy.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know that kind of like got off the track of Tolkien and everything, but actually I think it's very relevant because everybody that's involved in marketing, including fantasy, you know, publishers, has to do some kind of weird homogenization and creating a money machine, you know.
Yeah. I love,
Yeah.
His new
By the way,
Nimue's newest
none
one.
of us here, just letting you guys know, we are not doing any of these tactics.
No.
In fact, the more like truth bomb that we can get with you and like, here's who we are. And if you don't like it, go away.
Well, it's also the reason that I walked away from those companies. Like,
oh, yeah.
it's the reason I walked away from those companies, and I'm not sitting here going, I'm a current employee of this type of industry. It gets really old because because for your customers, they think your interaction is genuine and you're so friendly and you're so nice and you know this and this and you really take time to get to know your customers. No, I take time to get to know the ones that are going to come in frequently so that I can get
That's
money
right.
from you.
Right.
I really
So
don't.
that you can have a good outcome of your branch so that you get rewarded. Yeah.
On
I
a
got
yeah,
you.
on exactly on a generic level, I don't care. I
Right.
humanity
Yeah.
wise, no, I'm not connecting with you because I genuinely care. I'm connecting with you because I want profit, so my boss stays off my backside.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know.
Nimue says, weaponize the human experience, make
Make
money,
money.
Sith lightning.
Exactly.
And Bear Faith says she loves our policy. Okay.
So when we do this,
I like it
when we
too.
do this, we are being our genuine selves.
We
I am
are
not
talking.
here.
We are not marketing to you. We
Well,
don't
yeah.
care
Well,
if
listen.
you agree with us. If you do
Listen.
agree with us, hang out. If you
Let-
don't, go away. Like, it's literally, we do not want anything from people who are not
Well, yeah.
aligned. You know,
Talk
that's
about
not what we're about.
genuine. Now, Richard Park and I prefer to make our money in the old-fashioned way, like Walter White. We produce a fine product.
Oh my God.
Exactly, Vera. It's one
Exactly.
of those. Yeah. If anything, having played on the corporate world and understanding how it works, I'm kind of like the guys that are like, you get like the street magician who's doing this look at levitating trick. I'm the guy coming over, kicking the invisible stand and going,
right, or the mirror that's like
he's
reflecting.
on
Yeah,
stilts,
exactly.
or he's on a
yeah.
stand. Look, he's got a mirror box you can't see.
Exactly. Wow, that's funny. That's really funny. Well, we're at like about an hour and 20-ish minutes. I think we'll go ahead and end the stream. Thank
did you want me to give a little
for being here. Go ahead, Dave.
Did you want me to give a little teaser of my Dark Ages thing? I'm not sure when we're going to do it yet.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
Okay.
like upcoming in the next week or two. We haven't picked the date yet.
Yeah. I wrote this article is much longer. It's let's see what it is. It's 5,123 words versus 900 and some for the one I just read.
Yeah.
And it's reclaiming the truth behind the Dark Ages. And I'll just read the little blurb that I have to describe it to people, so they can get an idea of what it's about. And wait for
that to be announced on the YouTube channel. So by the way, if you hit the notification bell for all notifications, you'll know when our next live stream is that's public, because it'll show up. And this is public right now. It will show up in your phone. Like, your phone will say, hey, notification, Tia Oldalieva / Way of Arda's Lore is going live right now. So, it's a good thing to mark that little bell.
And I'll just give a very brief little teaser here. Sort of like Donald Trump does, when he says, well, I may say it in 2 weeks, or I may not. Wink, wink.
Talk about a marketing guy. He's definitely a marketing guy.
Reclaiming the truth behind the Dark Ages. This article examines the so-called Dark Ages, revealing a twilight of reconfiguration rather than darkness, integrating mythic parallels and historical nuance to illuminate how memory, innovation, and meaning persist beyond collapse. And it ties into, including the current various collapses that are going on. So I put a lot of effort into the article. I wrote it for
yes, you
quick,
did. And just I'll give my own little teaser drop here. When I read your statement about how the darkness was only lit on one side, nothing could be like totally truth bombing people. Like, exactly, we're enlightened, but it's like only one sliver. The rest was still shrouded. All of the other sides, if you will, were still shrouded in darkness. So yeah, it's very interesting.
I don't know.
So the history of the D, meaning Dave, or meaning DeKindre, or meaning something else. Like, just making sure that I understand that. By the way, I forgot to highlight this. I didn't realize that Bar Rescue was a reality show, but he was talking about Bar Rescue is a show that takes probably bars that are failing and turning it around into a successful business, and that
Oh,
they have
interesting.
to use all of these types of things in order to tap into the psychology of their customer. Yeah. And by the way, on the note of understanding your customer, I am actually okay with understanding what they need and that we deliver the need. I like the idea of being more transparent about it. I don't like the sneaky aspect.
Well, and before we cut off, there's a huge difference to genuinely addressing a need, which is not a bad thing. If your customer needs a particular type, growth, then coming to the person who can do past life, child, or can do, past regression, like hypnosis therapy, that's not a bad thing. However, if the individual, which isn't what most of corporate marketing is, we're not trying to address a genuine need. That's a getting to know your customer to address the need. Like if your customer's in pain,
Right.
learning massage techniques to treat that specific pain is one thing.
Exactly.
But that's not what corporate's doing. What
That's not what they're
corporates
doing.
do is we artificially create. I'll share one other thing before we go, just from my past.
Oh.
And it's a perfect marketing example. It's not one I participated in. So years ago, in my much younger years, one of my second jobs, exactly with what Nimue said there, one of my jobs was I worked in a hospital in the ER, but my second job, I worked fast food, just because hospitals are far too much like Grey's Anatomy. It gets like you would think the show is satirical. It's not.
It's not. It's like really literal, right?
It is pretty much the drama, the backstabbing. You get really tired of it. Grey's Anatomy does a wonderful job of actually showing behind the scenes how hospitals function.
Wow.
But anyway, my second job was at Taco Bell. Just because that's where a bunch of my friends worked. And so I got the job.
Like when you were young, yeah.
Well, I got the job because it was some extra money for my bills. But my primary job was the hospital. Anyway,
oh, I see.
So I worked two jobs at the same time.
Okay.
And in the Taco Bell one, corporates will create an artificial need for something. And my perfect example of marketing at its most successful ninja level was at the time, and I think they still have it, Taco Bell had a steak soft taco. It was literally tortilla, steak, this ranch lime sauce, cheese.
I remember that one.
And tomato.
Okay, yeah.
Now,
yeah.
It was at the time, this was early 2000s, it was like $3.65 or like $3.45. We were selling one or two a month or a week, maybe. So Taco Bell, fast food, as you know, they're constantly changing their marketing with their new product.
And they changed their menu too. Yeah.
Right. With their new product, because they're creating the reason for you to come back. Marketing, literally what they did one time was we got our new promotion. We opened the box to put the displays on the windows with the giant signs that say new. And they were getting ready to run the commercials. The product that particular month for their new promotion was literally they changed the name, and they literally called it, the new product was the carne asada grilled steak taco. The ingredients to the taco, to the soft taco, were identical to the taco we already had. They sent no new ingredients. They literally changed the name, slapped posters on the outside of the building, and started running some commercials on TV. We went from selling two soft tacos a week to 350 or 400 a week, where people were coming in going, "Oh my God, I want that new steak taco you have."
They're selling like hotcakes,
in the entire like 3-month, 4-month period that we ran the promotion, I had one customer who walked in and went, "Hey, Dak, what's the difference between this steak soft taco that you have and the previous one that you guys used to have?" Only customer out of
Astute.
thousands of people to ask. And all I could do was smirk and start laughing. And the guy looks at me and goes, "Nothing, is there?" And I told him, "Nope, the name change." He goes, "Bet they're selling like hotcakes." I'm like, "Yeah, we're selling
Exactly.
350,
Oh my God,
400.
that's so funny.
So corporate marketing, just to touch on that, is literally designed to not address a genuine need, but to create a need. Like
Right.
you could box horse poop, and if you describe new and you run commercials, people want it. So marketing, the difference is not getting to genuinely know your customer as it is to create an artificial need, a hole that you cannot, your life will not be complete until you get that steak soft taco or that.
Right. And then it's on repeat after that, because that's what they'll order every time that they come. Yeah.
Hey, man, do you have some of that equine effluvium that I heard about? Yeah. I want a box of those.
So yeah,
new and improved.
Before we cut off, that is one of the one of the things of genuinely knowing your customer and addressing a genuine need versus what the empty, hollow industry does, which is manufacture a need that you didn't previously have.
Right. Yeah. And we're definitely not guilty of the second one, because we don't care. We only care if you're here for the genuine, because all of us are being genuine about our connection with Tolkien and how that operates for us. And all of you are here because that interests you as well in some level. And maybe it's a beginning exploration, maybe it's like a like decades long exploration, like it is for some of us, but but we're not like misrepresenting ourselves here. In fact, we're really, as far as the quote marketing thing, because marketing could be used in a genuine sense too, like meaning to really connect with who we want to connect with. And when we changed our name from Way of Arda's Lore, actually, we cut away a lot of the people that were Elven this, Elven that, but they weren't like coming to us because of Tolkien Elven. They were coming to us for Elven Silver Elves or Elven whatever. And if we were sellouts, we'd say, sure, like, hang out with us and change our path and do whatever the hell we want. But we decided that wasn't in our best interest, and certainly not in your best interest. So when we changed our name to make it more Tolkien centered rather than Elven centered, like to a marketing person, they might think you shot yourselves in the foot. You had all these people that wanted Elven this and that and the other, and you're not delivering what they want. And it's like, but that's not because who we are, right? Like, we're not going to change our identity for other people that are into trendy bullshit, right?
Right.
That's funny. We got some comments here. So marketing is everything. We have I don't know about how Tolkien steak tacos.
I can see a market for that.
That's so funny. Or space elves.
Exactly. I just had to add that the elf derangement syndrome was driving me batshit. I mean,
Yeah. And by the way, on that note, and DeKindre, I think, also feels this way. Many of us are attracted to this path because of the Elven energies, but it's the Tolkien elf energies, not necessarily the Elven energies of everything else out there.
And then others are drawn, which is why we in the video
expanded.
Why we changed to Wall is others are drawn from the Hobbit energy or from the Dwarven energy. So it's not, we wanted to expand beyond just the Elven energy, and then to tell that also drove away the type of people that were like, yo, I'm only here for the Elven stuff. And it's like, yeah, but that's not all we are. And, so even like Lisa said, our expansion,
We're
if we were
okay
simply,
with talking about Tolkien Elven energy.
if we were only interested in what would get us views and clicks and likes, we would focus on
Yep.
certain things. We genuinely drove off followers and types
That's right.
of individuals because we were like, this isn't the market that we
It's
want,
not what we were
and
crafting.
it's not what we are.
Yeah.
It's not what we are. I'm not going to sit here and be like, this week I'm going to teach you how Tolkien decided that, Syrian star elves are the same thing
Or the same
as,
things
this.
as the Calaquindi or something. Yeah.
I'm not going to do that, even though there is a market out there that would eat that up.
Oh, yes.
Well, that's what
yes.
Kim Burrell was doing, wasn't she? I mean, she was basically
she was crossing
mixing
a lot of things,
yeah.
and she was channeling from her
Yeah.
guides, like those kinds of crossover things, and I mean, on its own, okay. I mean, as long as she's honest about what her source is, which is obviously from channeling or whatever, and she's channeling different guides than I believe Tolkien was channeling. Okay.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with that as long as you're transparent about your process. And we are not the same audience. We do not have the same audience as Kim Burrell did. And that has been evident over and over again. And by the way, love to Kim Burrell if you're watching this. Okay. We haven't heard from you forever. There's still people that sometimes inquire about you. We hope that you are absolutely well if you're watching.
But anyway,
we don't have a problem with that. But we wanted to define the brand, meaning our, like who we are as like practitioners of a Tolkien-based path.
Right. Well, and some of
we
the
wanted
academic
to have a name that really matched so that you guys would know what we are.
And on the
backside, we still talk about Tolkien elves.
Yes.
Yeah.
And on the backside, some of the academic acknowledgments that have resulted from the rebranding literally have opened doorways into areas that if we were doing those mass marketable genres, so to speak, we would not have
gotten the attention of academia. It is true. And also of the Tolkien Society because of that academia, because we were invisible to the Tolkien Society until Emily Baines brought forth her video about us, and now it's on the Tolkien Society channel about us. Like, it's literally right there.
As Dave said, he even tried to reach out in the past. And
even before we were formed.
It was told take off, take a hike, pretty much.
I was rejected with extreme prejudice.
So what we
gosh,
like if we were simply trying to market to everyone, we could do it. Like I said, with my corporate knowledge,
there's plenty of other things out there that we could tangent into if we felt like being all inclusive.
But we don't want to be empty and hollow. We want to be unique and different and genuine.
Yeah.
And so when we come out, that is what we are focusing on.
We're like the artists that don't sell out, like Prince didn't sell out, Pink didn't sell out, right? Like we're like that. Like, we're in it for life. We're in it for, it's not that we're not growing, but we're deepening our growing instead of like just jumping around into whatever's trendy at the moment.
We're going for quantity, or we're going for quality, not quantity.
That's right.
We don't want,
we're going deep, not wide.
Right. It would be easy to get 1 million followers on YouTube if we followed a specific marketing technique and strategy and video style. We could have 1 million people by next year.
Yeah.
But we aren't going to have 1 million Tolkien enthusiasts by next year.
And people that want to apply Tolkien in their spiritual practices and their spiritual lens. We wouldn't have that. And That is so important to us. That is primary. Okay. If people think that we're popular or whatever, great. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's not what it's about. Primary for us is the connection to Tolkien and the material and how it affects us in our spiritual lives. And we're hoping that that's you. Okay. Like if you're watching this video, if you're commenting, we're hoping that's you. And it doesn't mean that you have to only be like getting influences from Tolkien, because, you know, that's not, you know, Dak and I both studied like lots of paganism in the past. You know, I've studied like astrology, I've studied all kinds of things. So it's not like that it's only Tolkien. But I will say that, like for myself, that dedicating myself to really exploring Tolkien at a deep level, and I have not regretted my decision to do that. It's only made my practice with paganism actually better, okay, because Tolkien is the primary. I decided to make that the primary grounding, and then everything else kind of falls around it, including my prior, you know, practices with other pantheons and things like that. They still fall in sometimes, but it's not what I start with anymore. I primarily start Tolkien, you know, the Valar, all of the stuff. And then if stuff slips in, you know, obviously it's supposed to, you know, and that's my personal gnosis. Like for me, like for my own self, you know, I try to stick mostly with Tolkien. And Nimue has a great comment here. And then, she says, I love the expansion into Way of Arda's lore, which is abbreviated as WAL. And in the realness is why I stayed. The genuine path and perspective aligned with Tolkien is what makes it feel like home. Thank you so much. That was our goal.
Thank you.
Yes.
Yeah, that is exactly what we've been trying to achieve.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway.
Even our original co-founder back in 2005, Adam, and as much as he enjoys Tolkien, he decided to root into more of the Welsh material and the fairy lore, like meaning that that's his primary route. And then Tolkien is a part of his like experience, which that's okay. We're just saying that our primary experience from like what we've chosen to do is have Tolkien as our grounding. Certainly you don't, I mean, as an observer, you know, you don't have to be like that, but what you're going to watch here on our channel is people that have dedicated to do that, so that you can know that we're grounded in Tolkien first, and everything else like fills in the blanks. And so some people here are Christian, and so they may ground into Tolkien first, and then like some of their Christian elements like come in and make connections between the Bible and Tolkien, or whatever it is. And these are all okay. These are all okay. As long as Tolkien is primary, you're going to be happy here. And we don't care if it's only 5 people. We don't care. You know, we're here because we like, you know, to do this. And so we're being very transparent. We're not like in the background running marketing checks on you guys to see like, you know, how we can appeal to you. No. We don't care. We just want to find the people that are already into what we're into.
Let me put it like this. I'd much
even
rather
curious about it, and you know, that's cool too.
I would much rather have 5 serious people than 50,000 who blew a part of this every 300 years. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. Yeah, we're looking for depth and not width, or, you know, like breadth or whatever you want to call it. We're looking for depth. And I think that it's really a great experience and, you know, thank goodness for technology, or we might not find that depth without it, you know, because it's not very many people that live in our neighborhoods or whatever that can go down this rabbit hole with us. So. Now that is a wonderful statement, Vera Faith. She says, Tolkien is definitely primary with me. Excellent. Excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
If
Right.
you guys don't know, Faith has been a dedicant to the Catholic Church, and she still likes, Catholicism, etc. But what's happened is that she's experienced some really strange phenomenon in the Catholic Church that has not been supportive of her spirituality and her belief system. And so that is such awesome news that she has kind of really switched her alignment, in that Tolkien is primary now. And Catholicism is like, if it's there, great. If it's not, great, whatever, and that is wonderful. Too bad we don't have like in-person methods to meet others that are like us yet. One thing that we do want to do at some point in time is create like a Tolkien, like Arda convention type thing. And we thought about making it in the central time zone or the Eastern time zone, because it's kind of central to where like most of our followers are. And so, we could look at around and like see where else too. I know we have some followers in Arizona. I know that Dak is going to be going to Scotland after he leaves Hawaii. So, again, we're going to be like having our shift is moving eastward just because of that moving that he's doing. So we thought about the Georgia area where Dave is, like loosely, in the Appalachians, and doing it during the Endari, like the middle days, like, so it would be like the Elven middle days when elves travel and do other things. And so
There's all kinds of cabins
we've been
around
thinking
here of all
about
different
this.
sizes.
We've
Yeah.
been thinking about this. Okay, so, oh, and Phil says he's in Nevada. I did not realize that. Very interesting. And Verface says, and I still go there, but they have no idea about. And you know what, Verfaith, your faith is none of their business. You are there for your own nourishment and your own community and your own connections. And they don't need to know like about that. I suppose that you could bring up Tolkien to people who might understand it, but they're going to think that Catholicism is the root, and that Tolkien is a Catholic, so therefore it's okay. And maybe that's okay for their viewpoint, but they don't have to know that Tolkien is your primary. They don't have to know.
Exactly. Yeah.
They don't have to know. None of their business. Your spirituality is your business. Okay, and that is not something a cult will tell you. Like, that whole cult thing. We're gonna erase that right now. We're not gonna tell you how to believe. We are going to be telling you that your belief systems are your belief systems. But if they match some of the qualities of the belief systems that we have and that we share with you, that's totally fine. We will be having, unfoldment of how, like we can deepen those paths as we do our clergy program, schooling, what have you. Like, we haven't even figured out what to call it, because clergy sounds so churchy,
Yeah,
right?
we're
Like,
still
it's
working
just
on
not
that.
like the right vibe.
And like I said before,
A seminary still sounds really, like it's just, like all of these things.
But yeah, no,
Convent.
besides Dave's next video, probably following that, we're ready to start, because I mentioned it earlier in the year, and I've made progress on 2 of them. So, and we've always had TL de Lieva, so that's technically 3. But pretty soon we're ready to, I'm going to share it with Dave and Lisa and go over things, but we're ready to start expanding into, besides the Elven path, having the Dwarven path. It's pretty far along and ready to be revealed, what it's called, what the image is. And I've made some decent progress on the Hobbit one as well. And then the next one is going to be the human one. But within a short time, we'll be releasing that. And then we can address material and content in those directions as well.
That is such great news. I'm glad that you updated our audience about that. That's awesome. Nimue says faith, and we're talking about like your personal faith, right? Okay, faith is a personal treasure. Only share it with those you deem worthy. That is correct. When and if you choose. Yeah, it's nobody's business, really.
Absolutely.
Not even ours.
No.
You know, we hope that we feel like that we're creating a container where you can share some of your beliefs. But you're not obligated to share your beliefs here. Like, it's more of I mean, we hope that we foster an environment where you want to, because like there's commonality, you know what I mean?
The problem that I had in the past before I started this whole thing, and just talking to people about Tolkien, but of course I had always had a shamanic layer, so but whenever I would bring that in, they wouldn't get it. So
I know.
So it was literally, as the Bible saying goes, casting my pearls before swine, and you don't want to do that, you know.
Yay! We're coming to your house, Nimue. Awesome. I can do second breakfast and second lunch and second dinner and supper and afternoon tea and
we have the snacks. Yes.
I love it, right? That's so cool. For those of you who missed it. Okay. Very good. Anyway. Well, we're gonna let you guys have the rest of your day. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. We're so appreciative, and we're so deeply committed to being an anchor for you, and yet allowing you your own process and your own sovereignty. And
Absolutely.
That is like what separates us. We're not marketing to you. We're not trying to, like twist your mind and like that's not our goal at all. So
absolutely.
And so therefore, and by the way, the cults use all of those same things that we've talked about, right? Because they need to know how to separate you from your money or from your sexuality or whatever it is that they're after. But most of the time it's money.
It's all in isolating you. It's getting you
exactly
to where
and your power, your energy.
We are the only source of actual information. Don't trust anyone who isn't us.
And I guess on that definition alone, I could say that there's a lot of churches guilty of that are mainstream, that are not considered cults.
No, but they are, and
I think so too.
It's not to before we since we need to segue just for a second. If you ever look at, it's not a bad thing. It simply is what it is. But if you look at most churches, when they put flyers out for attracting you to your church, to their church, it's never, are you confident? Are you at peace? Are you a solid individual? It's never those type of flyers. Unfortunately, what they attract, and it's the reason that they are a cult at times without,
and it's the reason they're successful too.
But if you look at the flyers that they attract, it's, are you lost? Are you depressed? Do you feel alone? Are you isolated? Do you have no friends? Do you feel adrift? They're looking for individuals that they can market
that are
to,
very good prey. Yes.
That let me drag you in if you are lost and alone and scared and afraid. Let me bring you in because we have the answer to fix all of that.
Right.
We're not going to teach you to find it inside you, but if you get to our group, we've got everybody else who feels lost and afraid and alone.
Exactly. Misery loves company. Yeah.
And so that's one of our biggest differences is if you are lost, yes, we can help. But we're not we're not
trying to discourage you from only confident people are like
what we're trying to do is help you to find that confidence in you.
Yeah.
Not be like, well, if you come to our live streaming every Sunday at 5:00, we'll show you what confidence is.
We'll
tell
fill
you.
your head with a bunch of our thoughts.
Right.
I will say that we do prefer people who think for themselves.
Yes.
We do actually prefer that. That is very anti-cult like. Okay.
Well,
that is very anti-cult like. We want people that have individual thought processes. However, if you know, like, I'm not, this isn't a freaking test of like, how much
Right.
are you like going to be? That's not what's going on. But I do want to be really clear that absolutely we're here for help, like when we can and like in ways that we can. We don't know what those are yet. We're a really tiny little operation here.
Right.
But we want, here's Nimue saying low hanging fruit. Good. Come on in and drink the Kool-Aid. Yep.
And then
exactly.
I just want to say, Lisa, as you may remember, in the past and up until fairly recently, we would have, and this is in reference to your statement that we prefer people who have their own mind and will and so forth. We've had people like asking us to tell them what elf tribe am I, or I can't answer that question, and I don't think the other two can either. So it's not.
And in my case, I don't want to either.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, okay. And by the way, Philip says grape Kool-Aid is the best. Yeah. Probably because it's purple and the chakra and the spirituality, right? Anyway.
Yeah.
Fake and amethyst. Okay. I know Verifaith says, I know churches are guilty of trying to scam people. I have seen it. The whole thing about tithing at least 10%. And then in addition to your tithe, they also want offerings. Guess what? In the ancient times, the church was the state. Your taxes was your tithing to the church. And get this, 10% compared to the 50% sometimes that they ask for in the government, which tells you who the real criminals are in our case, because there's church and state that are separated. So what the churches are doing here is they're applying that 10% law in an inappropriate way, because we pay 50% taxes. Okay. And then they're requiring 10% for their own thing, so that basically you're out 60% of your money. Okay. So yes, I have a problem with that 10%. It was absolutely not applied in the way that it was intended.
But
I have a problem with that.
We'll let them have their day, though. But yeah, I agree.
Well, yeah. I just have to leave that with the Richard Parker statement. If any of you happen to eat at an establishment called Pollos Hermanos, I ask you to sample our fabulous blue product. I think you'll like.
Oh my goodness. So the brother chickens, is that what Pollos Hermanos means?
Chicken brothers. Yeah, that's what it means.
All right.
The blue Kool-Aid?
Yeah.
That's funny. Yeah, because Philip says that grape is the best, but anyway. We will sign off. We hope you had fun with us this afternoon. Go ahead and, go about your day, the rest of your weekend. We'll be back soon with the hang on, the darkness of the wait. The realms of darkness. Oh my gosh. Anyway, just look for our next video. Okay?
My Dark Ages video. My Dark Ages paper, yo. That's what it is.
Dark Ages paper.
Yeah.
Yes.
Have a good one, everyone.
Aw. Nimue says, thank you for the video. Take care, everyone. Thinking about steak tacos for dinner. We're coming over. Tacos are multicultural. We're there. Okay. Awesome. I can't think of anybody that hates tacos. I just don't know them. Okay. And if they do, they probably aren't worth knowing. So there you go. My opinion. Okay. You guys have a wonderful afternoon, evening, wherever you are. And thank you for hanging out and like learning more about us, learning more about, like why we are so deeply connected to Tolkien. And it's really a mythological thread. It's truly mythology. Oh, look at this. She says that we're invited.
Oh.
And you know what? So I know that you are in Arizona, where it is probably like an oven, right? I mean, even more so than here in Sunland, where I'm at. So, you know what? Look at it this way, Nimue. All the tacos would stay warm without even your efforts. Okay, so we could eat till and party till our heart's content. How's that? Awesome. Maybe we should consider Arizona. Ooh, in September, Arizona. We should think about that. So for ArdaCon, like when that happens, like we even want to think about that, because Phoenix isn't that far away, and it's like it's really accessible, like through like a few different airports, and so let's think about that. I know that in the Georgia side, like I know there's JetBlue and a couple of the other ones that are like really super cheap airports, and like we could find places that are pretty close to Atlanta, right?
Well, it's an international airport, so
yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Well, so is Phoenix. Yeah. Okay. Yay! Something to think about. Woo! Okay. Have a good one, you guys. Bye.
Yeah. Bye everybody.